Hello everyone and welcome to another episode in this beginner's guide to Kerbal Space Program 2. Once again, we are in version 0.2.0. That is the 4 science update, and what we're doing is going through the various missions in that campaign and looking at how to build rockets and be able to perform those missions. And right now, the mission that we are looking to accomplish today is the Minmus Monument mission. This is the mission to land near the monument on Minmus, find the source of the mysterious signal that is on the surface of Minmus, and to that end we have Toming in, well, this is actually the Munar 2-2, because Munar 2 was the one that landed at the Moon Monument, and I'm just using that same vessel again, because if you have a vessel that can land on the moon and get back to Kerbin, while you have a vessel that can land at Minmus and get back to Kerbin. And that's what's going to be the plan for today. And if you need the build for this vessel here, just check out the video that is up here as well. Last episode we went through the work of getting this thing to the situation it's in now, which is the polar orbit about Minmus. And if you want to see that mission, well, then check out that video up here again. But this one is going to be about performing this landing, getting down to the Minmus Monument, which is right at this little waypoint right here. And since the monument is actually very close to Minmus's North Pole, how do we leave Minmus and get back to Kerbin in an efficient way from that particular situation? Anyway, let's get on with the landing. Now, what you want to do first, you can see we are in this polar orbit, and what you need to do is time warp until the Minmus Monument is very close to being right underneath the orbit. And if you take a look, I'm kind of already in that situation. I didn't time warp to this situation. This happened to be the way it worked out for me. It may not have worked out that way for you. And if it didn't work out that way, all you need to do is time warp, and as Minmus rotates, wait to the point where the monument is a little bit before coming underneath the orbit. But since I'm already in that situation, I'm just going to actually go straight into the descent. Now, we're not going to right now our ship is actually pretty close to being right over the monument. That's not the situation I want. I want to start my descent when I'm about a quarter of an orbit ahead of where my landing zone is. So let's first start by time warping to that situation. Get rid of that. I clicked on that by mistake. And you can see that as we're time warping, Minmus is turning. Now the monument has actually gone a little bit past being underneath our orbit. That's okay. We can do some orbital corrections, some corrections on the way down. That's not a problem. Minmus being such a low gravity world, actually it's pretty forgiving. It's pretty easy to make corrections and all that kind of stuff without having to spend too much fuel to do so. Alright, let's stop our time warp here, and let's do our descent. So we're rolling this around to the retrograde vector. So what we need to do next is to lower our orbit so that it impacts with Minmus. So, lock now onto the retrograde vector. We're going to give ourselves a little bit of throttle, and we're going to watch our periapsis come down. And what we're going to be looking for is, there it is, that impact marker here with Minmus's surface. Now I can also see I need to pull this trajectory quite a bit towards the, actually it's kind of hard to tell which way that is, isn't it? Is it east? Is it west? Let's see here. If I turn myself, let's see, which way is that? If I look from here, this way would be towards the west, right? Yes, it would be. So I'm going to put this on surface, actually, because then you actually get, no you don't. What am I talking about? I'm going to have to look at the nav ball. West is 270 degrees on the nav ball, so going right about there. I'm still locked to retrograde, so let's take it off of that. And then we'll pull our trajectory towards that side. There we go. Now I'm noticing I'm also pushing away, and in fact don't even have the intercept anymore. So actually what I probably should be doing is putting my ship halfway between the retrograde vector and the west direction to sort of combine those two motions together. That's looking quite a lot better. You could also, by the way, if you're finding all that really confusing, put a maneuver node, create a maneuver plan like that, and actually play around with these guys to try and put that impact marker where you want it to be. And where you want it to be is just a little bit further along, because Minmus is still going to rotate a little bit as we fall, and a little bit long, so like right in around here. But you know what? I'm going to just do this, continually to do this manually like this. And that's looking to me to be pretty much alright. Now, to prepare ourselves for our descent, we need to do a couple of things. Again, we need to lock ourselves back again to the retrograde vector. We need to put our nav ball on surface. It already is. We need to put this on ground. It already is, because you want to have your altitude measured from the surface. And I also like to rotate my vessel so that blue is up on the nav ball. And that's to help me in orienting myself from this screen to this screen, because now what's movement on the nav ball will match movement on the screen. So for instance, if I move my ship up towards the blue, my ship actually goes up on the screen. If I orient myself down towards the brown, I'm going to point down towards the surface. And even the left and right works if I look at it from the back of the ship. If I move my little icon to the left on the nav ball, the ship is pointing more to the left, and vice versa. So that helps me keep my orientation, because sometimes it's pretty easy to get yourself kind of mixed up as to which way is what. But right now, what we need to do is simply time warp and get ourselves closer to our destination. Okay, let's stop our time warp. We can look here and reassess. Things are looking pretty good. Sometimes Minmus might rotate, and you might have to do a little bit more orienting. That's fine as well. And of course, we need to do a very precise landing. Whoop. Got a little bit of a camera change there. And here might be a good time for us to actually take off a little bit more and get this impact marker closer to our destination. So instead of burning retrograde, what I'm going to do is lock here and put it right on the horizon, because what I'm interested in doing is killing off my horizontal velocity, not so much my vertical velocity. I do want to get down to the surface, so right now keeping that vertical velocity going is a good idea. So I'm going to take off, move that impact marker closer, closer, closer. Again, still make sure to go long. That's always a good idea. Maybe right around the rim of the crater would look pretty good. Might need to go a little bit more towards the west. Hard to tell which way's west here. Let's see, is that way moving it correctly? Nope, that's the wrong way. You could always do a little test. Let's go about 90 degrees the other way. As soon as you come over the pole, which way's west? And it's like everywhere's south, really. Alright. The other thing you might be noticing as well is that my science light is flashing, because I am now into near space about Kerbin, so we're going to click that and collect a whole stack of science. No reason to actually take a look at it. And now, oh, we can see our coming right over our Minmus Monument. You can see how much time you have over Minmus. Everything's happening very, very slowly. It's not like the moon. So if you've already done your moon landing, and if you're following through the campaign, you will have already done a moon landing or two. It's pretty easy to deal with Minmus. Now I can see I'm coming a little bit too far to the left, so I'm going to point my ship this way. Start taking off more of that velocity. Moving that retrograde icon the other way. Let's come back this way. And we're coming, the idea here is to simply come right over top of the monument down there. It's looking pretty good right now. Now the one thing that is happening with this ship is I have a lot of fuel in this can because I overbuilt this rocket. I did that deliberately. I'm going to have to ditch this stage in order to land because the landing gear is up here. There's still plenty of fuel in this stage as well. If you are losing this stage at this point here, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Okay, I'm going to start even reducing. Now the thing to notice too is as I'm burning horizontally, my retrograde vector is making its way towards the top of the nav ball. And the idea here is to put it right at the top when we're right over top of the monument. If you want to, do yourself a quick save so you can practice this. I think I'm actually going to start killing it right here. There we go. So now my retrograde vector is very, very close to the top of the nav ball. And that's telling me that I am pretty much falling straight down. So I'm going to lock it now onto that retrograde vector. And now I can sort of see I'm off a little bit. Let's see, which way do I have to go? Put it back on lock. Not that way. Not that way. But more that way. That's it. So I'm going to push it that way. So we want to come as close as we can to the monument. Minmus affords us, because we're falling so slowly, the luxury of doing that. And now I can see I'm coming a little bit, let's see, maybe more this way. Ah, yes. Nice, okay. And the idea, land somewhere within this circle, I think, is a good idea. You don't have to land right on top of the statue. In fact, probably landing right on top of the statue would be a bad plan. And I kind of like what's happening here, so what I'm going to do again is start pushing that retrograde icon towards the top. Telling me now that I'm falling straight down. Now I'm going to lock it to the retrograde vector. And I'm very happy. I'm very pleased. Maybe I'm not very pleased. If you want to do some more adjustments, you are welcome to. Maybe a little more this way. All right, no more fooling around because we're pretty close to the surface. Now, because I have a ton of fuel left here, I'm going to actually zero out my velocity with the fuel that I have remaining as we come down here. So we're going to apply, watching that surface retrograde vector, or surface speed. And once that gets around 0, there we go. We're going to stage. And we're going to extend our landing gear. And we're going to let that just fall and hit the surface. If you're worried you're going to fall right on top of it, just simply tilt to one side a little bit. Like so. Push yourself a little bit towards the side. And then that way you'll make sure not to land right on top of it, though this thing might just explode for us. And now as we're coming on our way down, we're simply watching our distance to the ground. We're watching our speed. And the idea here is to simply kill our speed as we approach the surface. So give a little bit of throttle. The later you can leave this, the more efficient this is. But because this rocket is very overbuilt, it's actually pretty easy to do. So only falling at about 5 meters per second. I'll apply a little throttle and cut it off. Apply a little more throttle, cut it off. And we'll just nicely touch on the surface. And again, I'm kind of in the groove there. I wasn't sure if that texture was going to be reflected, but it is. So I'm finally kind of in this little valley, but that's okay. So we are now down on the surface. We have succeeded in the contract for the Minmus Monument, so that is now done. We can close that tracker off. If you aren't close enough, all you have to do is EVA and get a little bit closer to our Squidward-like statue here, and you'll get the contract that way. I also have a ton of science to do, so don't forget that. And we're also going to EVA our Kerbal. Oh, that's the wrong button. EVA our Kerbal, there we go. Oh, our rocket's seems to be alright. We'll hop on down, because of course we have even more science to do. Alright, That science is now complete. And in fact, that's all the science we have to collect. And if you want to, now would be a good time to actually practice with that EVA pack. Again, keep track of your monopropellant. Make sure you don't end up using it all up, because then your Kerbal won't be able to fly back and will have to walk. The way you activate the jetpack is you press R to activate your RCS, or simply click here. Let's put it back on again. And Shift is thrusting up. Left control is thrusting down, and the WASD keys are for moving left, right, forward, and back, and you can use Q and E to rotate like that. And this is a great opportunity for you to practice. You can, for instance, practice maybe, let's see if you can put your Kerbal onto the hand of our statue here. Get a good look at the statue. Again, all along, keep an eye on your monopropellant. Again, the low gravity of Minmus makes this a nice, easy place for you to practice. But when you're aboard with all of that, what you can do, or feel like you're done, just head on back to your ship, because it's time for us to head back. There's nothing more for us to do here. Let's start looking at how to get ourselves back to Kerbin. Now, because our landing spot is pretty close to the North Pole, there's no way for us to go into an equatorial orbit around Kerbin, or around Minmus. No matter which way I go, I'm going to be very close to being in a polar orbit. So I'm going to start by heading off towards the east. We're going to see what orbit I get, and see how do we get ourselves from that orbit back to Kerbin. So what we'll do here is get ourselves back to the ship. We would like to identify which way is east on the nav ball, so you're ready to go. And east is 90 degrees, which is that way. Also notice that as soon as I take off, I should straighten off this ship a little bit, because I am kind of pointing at a bit of an angle. Another thing to watch for is we are at the bottom of a crater, not to mention a relatively large statue that is immediately this way. So go up for a little bit and make sure you clear all that before pitching over to the east. As well, your apoapsis here is going to climb very, very quickly. So what you want to make sure is that you keep an eye on that and don't get your apoapsis too big. I like to shoot for something a little over 60 kilometers, and that's going to be about it. So with all that thought of, again, we're going to go straight up towards the east, but we're going to make sure to clear everything, and we got to keep an eye on the apoapsis. I'm only going to give myself a little bit of throttle because there's a lot of thrust on this rocket. So off we go. We're going towards that way. We're going to go up for a little bit, and then we're going to go to the east, which is away from the statue. That is good. There we go. Maybe a little bit more throttle. If you like, you can retract your landing gear, though it's not necessary. And again, making sure I'm clearing that. I'm also watching my apoapsis now at 10 kilometers. I can see that I'm going to be clearing this crater edge, so I'm going to be pitching over very, very aggressively now, trying to build up that horizontal velocity. And when this gets around 60, gonna cut it. A little over 60. Alright, now I'm just going to time warp up to my apoapsis and circularize as per normal. And as our time to apoapsis gets really, really close to zero, we're going to give ourselves a little bit of throttle. It's not going to take much to get this thing into orbit. So let's see, at about 5 seconds, a little bit of throttle. There we go. And once we're around 60, there we go. Beautiful. All right, so I'm happy with that. We have now got our orbit. Let's take a look at what our orbit is like. So this is our close to a polar orbit, not quite. You can see it's on a bit of a slant. But what we need to do next is to eject ourselves back from Minmus's SOI and get ourselves back to Kerbin. Again, remember for the moon how this works. It's still the exact same idea. If I want to get my resulting orbit after leaving Minmus's SOI to come down, I need to eject myself in a retrograde direction. Minmus is moving from left to right on your screen, so I need to eject myself in a retrograde direction relative to Minmus's orbit about Kerbin in order to bring down the resulting orbit. So I want to eject myself that way. Now, what's going to end up happening is, let's say I put a maneuver about here and give that some prograde. Start raising my orbit, you can see that no matter what I do, I'm going to be ejecting myself in the wrong direction. So I'm going to be ejecting myself, right? I want to eject myself along this line, but I'm ejecting myself along this line. And no matter how I move this, right? I'm not going to get it to go in the right direction because of the orbit that I'm in. Now, there are a number of ways in which you can fix this. Number one is, Minmus is a pretty light body, and if you have the fuel for it, you can use your normal vector here and pull that trajectory in the direction you need it to go. So a little bit like that. If I'm noticing it's going too low, I can adjust that with the timing to bring it up like that, and I can pull it even more that way. Again, towards that direction there. A little bit more. Again, it's going low, so I need to bring it up a bit, like that. That's pretty close to the right direction. And we can take a look at our periapsis with Kerbin. A little bit more prograde. Again, we want that periapsis down into Kerbin's atmosphere. I personally prefer something like about 35 kilometers. You can see it's getting lower. The direction, we'll check that. That's all looking pretty good there. So I think I just need to give myself just a little bit more juice, as it were. And there we go, about 35 kilometers. Now the thing to notice is this is costing me more fuel because of this normal component to the burn. Normally my ejection from Minmus is about 150 meters per second. Now it's about, well, not about, it's 206 meters per second. Thankfully, I have tons of fuel in this vessel, so that's not going to be a problem. But you could find yourself in a situation where that is going to be a problem. Number one is, the further this orbit is off from going in the direction that you want, the worse that this burn is going to get. As well, if I was doing this, say, in a polar orbit about the moon has a lot higher gravitational field. This deviation is going to be a lot more expensive than that. So if you want to, you can do exactly what I'm doing here. I definitely have the fuel to do it, but let's show this what to do if you don't have the fuel to do this normal correction. So I'm going to actually delete this maneuver and look at, well, what do I do in that situation? Well, if I want to get going in the right direction, what I need is for the plane of this orbit, so I look at it from edge on like that, to be along the same line as Minmus's direction around Kerbin, so along this purple line here. So I'm going to focus my view on Minmus, and I'm going to start time warping, and what I want you to do is pay attention to this angle between Minmus's orbit about Kerbin and the plane of the orbit that we're in about Minmus. So we're going to start doing some time warping. And I'm time warping at the highest time warp that I can. That is a little bit unfortunate that the time warp is that slow, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to the tracking station where we can time warp a lot quicker. Now the thing to notice is when I go to the tracking station, notice how the time warp is still the same because it's still doing it for the vessel that I'm in. So what to convince it that, you know, you can't, if you try to switch, like for instance if I view Kerbin, it's still saying that. It's still thinking I'm on our vessel. So what you need to do is actually leave the tracking station, go to the Kerbal Space Center, and then go back to the tracking station. We'll look at Minmus. There's our Munar 2-2, and we don't want to control that. We just want to focus our view on Minmus. But now look at how much time warping we have here. So that's the way to fix the time warping. So again, I focus my view on Minmus, and what I want to do is put this orbit on its edge and pay attention to the angle between our orbit and Minmus's orbit about Kerbin. So we're going to start doing some time warping. And the thing to notice is how that angle is changing. Let's slow that a little bit. Now it's going bigger. That's okay because eventually it's going to come around to to the other side. Now, why is that happening? Why is that all changing? Well, it's changing because Minmus, of course, is orbiting Kerbin. And as it orbits Kerbin, its orientation towards Kerbin is going to continually change. However, our orbit is going to continue to remain in the same plane relative to the stars. So our orbit is actually staying the same. It's Minmus that's moving, but the end result is that we can affect this angle simply by moving forward in time. So all I'm going to do is move forward in time until the plane of our orbit is along the same line as Minmus's orbit is around Kerbin. Alright, I'm calling it. There we go. I'm calling it right about there. So, we're going to head back to our ship. So we go to Minmus, find our Mooner 2-2, and now we're going to control it. And now we have an orbit that is going in the right direction. Again, the idea is Minmus is going left to right, so we need to eject ourselves in that direction. So we're going to put a maneuver over here on the other side. Burn it just prograde, like so. About 150 meters per second should be about what it takes. If you find that it's going high, that just or low, either way, that just means you need to adjust the timing of this a little bit. And what you want to do is watch your periapsis with Kerbin. Oh my gosh, it's already, you can see, well, oh no, it's not, it's in the thousands. So I'm just going to keep burning like this. There is a moon encounter happening, which can happen. Is the moon encounter happening on our way down? It sure is. Well, that is kind of frustrating. Let's see if we can avoid the said moon encounter. So I'm going to need to stay kind of to the north of the... See, as I come down too far, I'm hitting the moon, so I'm going to need to stay above the moon. So that means I'm going to need to spend a little bit more. That's okay. See if I can adjust the timing a little bit more. Well, now we're way into Kerbin. Let's back off a little bit. And that can happen. The moon can really get in your way. See how the moon is, again, getting in our way here a little bit? And there's a couple of ways to deal with all of that. One is to, again, just adjust your trajectory so that I don't end up hitting the moon. The moon just has a tendency to do that. There we go. And then just live with that fact and give myself a little bit more. The other thing to do is to time warp a little bit further so that you're not timing it so that you're hitting the moon. But you don't want to deal with those moon intercepts. I mean, you can, but the moon has more of a tendency to mess up your trajectory than it is to help you. So I would advise just avoiding it. But either way, we did have to spend a little bit more delta V than before because of our avoidance of the moon. Not too much of a saving as what I was showing you the first time, but I wanted to show that to you because you could be in a very different situation where performing this is the only way in which you're going to be getting yourselves back. Either way, all that's left for us to do now is to actually perform the burn. And of course, once this burn is complete, there's nothing left for us to do except to enjoy the gravity slide back down towards Kerbin, eject our service module just before entering into Kerbin's atmosphere, and enjoy the view as we drift gently down towards the surface. And with that, I'm going to be drawing this episode to a close. I hope that you enjoyed it, and that I'll see you again for the next one.